I just got to tell you, Congressman, we could potentially get someone to play you during the interview. If you can't make it, we can just get somebody to play you during the interview. Find a handsome man with a goatee and a
Benny, it was good to
suit.
see Terrence. I mean, Jasmine on your show. Terrence is always doing great work.
Okay, so Congressman, let's getting back on track here. Since we just did, I mean, we thought that what she's done this week has been like very much a SNL skit. SNL would never dare parody it, so we're gonna do our best humble job of doing that. However, you shouldn't attack reporters in the halls of Congress, right? You shouldn't call people in wheelchairs, Hot Wheels, and you shouldn't issue death threats to Elon Musk. Can we establish that? Do you think that Republicans who are in control of the House should potentially do something about that?
Yeah, well, it's unfortunate to see, Benny. But the bottom line is, I think, it's desperation. They don't control the House. They don't control the Senate. They don't control the presidency. And so you're seeing them lash out like little toddlers. And in a way, I think it's great to have, voices like Jasmine Crockett become the front runners for the Democrat Party, because it just goes to show America that this is what they're really like. This is what they're about. They're not about policies that make it easier for Americans, make it safer for Americans. And so I wish they would figure it out. I wish they would put Americans first, but politically it's great for us.
So politically, what's not great for the Republican Party and what seems to be the only bulwark against the President Trump's administration, since we have unified control of government, is the D.C. court system. And you've been very public. Many of your colleagues have shied away, but you've been very public about either defunding it, impeaching judges, and pushing back, since Congress, well, it's a co-equal branch and you have oversight. So can you talk me through the probability of Judge Boasberg getting every single Trump case, which is really unique and special, and two, what is Congress going to do about it to measure that weight and balance?
Well, it's interesting, Benny, because we do have constitutional authorities to impeach judges. I was the first member of Congress to call for the impeachment of Judge Engelmeyer when I saw the play call. The play call was obviously, like I said, they don't control anything right now, so they're going to use these radical left-wing judges to try and, stop the Trump agenda. And, it's interesting, Benny, because I've heard Republicans for a long time, many of them are my colleagues, who said if we lost this election, the country was over. It was done, because they were watching the trajectory. They were watching the lawfare. They were watching the authoritarian nature of the Democrat Party and what it's turned into. So you have an imminence there, right? And many of my colleagues also talked about, if the Democrats get in power, they're going to completely change the system to benefit themselves. But here we are. The Trump administration is absolutely crushing it. We have the Congress, we have the Senate, and a lot of my colleagues aren't acting like they understand the situation, how imminent and how just unbelievably, historical this opportunity is for us to start turning this country back around. And, our friend Steve Bannon says to delay is to deny, and that's what they're trying to do right now. So it's so important that we do everything possible to, send a serious shot across these judges' bow, so that they understand that they are not more powerful than the president of the United States. And we can do that in many ways. I'm just hoping that my colleagues understand the severity of the situation and that they rise to the occasion. Because if they stop President Trump from doing exactly what he told the American people that he would do, from doing exactly what they voted him in office to do, we're not going to get much done. And that's the bottom line.
Congressman, this morning, Kristi Noem dropped a video from the depths of the terrorism detention center in El Salvador, where Americans are now sending terrorists. Let's just call them what they are. If you're here to rape, pillage, murder, and to run a drug cartel, you're a terrorist on our soil. These judges did nothing to stop those terrorists from coming into this country. In fact, we paid for most of them to come into this country, flew them in ourselves. They did nothing, complete silence. But now that we're repatriating them, worse in their eyes, putting them in prison where they belong, they're stopping those planes. This was, of course, the egregious ruling that Trump had to turn around military planes that were flying terrorists out of our country. That's the ruling. The ruling was turn the military planes around. If a judge is willing to do that, and I'm simply asking you this as a Navy SEAL who I know has gone on many missions to go kill bad guys, as a Navy SEAL, what's the limiting principle here? When will one of these judges stop a military flight out to do a military mission to get bad guys? Like, at what point do the judges say, I'm the commander in chief? Because it seems like prima facie, what's happening here?
Well, you're exactly right, Benny. I mean, many of these judges, and I think there's like 670 district judges in the country, that's what they're basically doing. They're trying to basically, in this case, they're trying to say that we're more powerful than the president of the United States, and we can, usurp his authority as commander in chief to protect the national interests of the American citizens. And that's why this is so important. And that's why, I hope that your audience continues to blow up members of Congress to help them understand how serious this is. This isn't just some, irrelevant ruling from these judges. This is very, very serious. Had those pilots actually listened to the judge, they might have run out of fuel. They might have brought these very dangerous terrorists back to, an airport here in the United States that didn't have the security footprint, that we had overseas to receive them. And it could have gotten really ugly really quickly. So I'm proud of the president for continuing to do what he knows is right, continuing to do what he promised the American people. And it is so important that members of Congress wake up and realize, how serious this is and that we need to act. Because if we don't act, Benny, what's going to happen. They're going to continue to do this over and over and stall everything that the president of the United States is doing.
There's no limiting principle, Eli. They could have stopped. I mean, in this, given the scenario here, when you were on one of your, I assume, dozens, hundreds of classified missions that you flew as a Navy SEAL, that a judge could have absolutely enjoined your flight and said, no, actually, given these powers, I'm going to command this military jet. I'm going to command your Navy SEAL group. I mean, am I wrong in that assessment?
No, I mean, and it would have been extremely dangerous, and all of us operators, on that helicopter or in that convoy would have been shaking our heads like, what the hell is this judge doing, putting our lives at risk when we're trying to, protect American citizens or protect our allies. And again, Benny, that's why this is so important. And I'm glad that you and other, conservative, commenters are, railing against this to try and help give Congress the backbone necessary and apply the pressure necessary so that we actually do something about this.
Yes. Okay. So very, very quickly here, because I'm no congressman, right? I'm not an elected office. I'm not a lawyer. I wouldn't consider myself a scholar by any sense, but this article from The Federalist that a third of DC district judges were not born in the United States of America, that they are foreigners by birth. Now, they might have been naturalized. I assume they were, or they have dual citizenship. But this is shocking to me. It seems like at the very least, you should ask that your judges not be dual citizens of a foreign power, or maybe at best be born here, right? Be Americans by birth. I'm not sure if this is shocking to you. I would love to see a new rule put in place that says judges should be Americans. This just seems very dangerous.
Yeah, well, it's honestly not shocking to me, Benny. Here in Washington, D.C., it's kind of like being in the belly of the beast. For me, it's kind of like a political deployment where 95% of this town is Democrat. And I'm not surprised when I see, laws on the books that don't protect citizens at all. I'm not surprised to see Washington, D.C., have some of the highest crime rates in the country. And quite frankly, I'm not surprised to see that a third of its judges weren't even born in the United States of America. But again, that's why it's so important that members of Congress understand what time it is, the unique opportunity that we have with, a historic leader like President Trump, he's playing to win, Benny. He's playing like he's not trying to get elected. He's not playing politics. He's playing smash mouth ball, and he's doing everything that he promised, and he's doing everything with common sense, Benny. All of this stuff is common sense. I mean, he's flying out, radical, dangerous gang members, and putting them in prisons overseas, and these judges are trying to stop him. And you mentioned on your show, they didn't do a damn thing to try and stop these guys from coming into the country. And it just shows how partisan they are. And it's unbelievable to me that, many of my colleagues, are seemingly playing to get reelected, and they're playing politics and, kind of putting their, finger in their mouth, putting it in the air and trying to gauge which way winds are blowing instead of doing what's necessary to protect American citizens. And quite frankly, to support the president of the United States, who's doing a damn good job.
So very quickly, would you be in favor of an amendment that says you should be an American citizen only if you're going to be ruling over our Constitution?
Yeah, I would have no problem with that at all, Benny.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like duh. Like we have that for the president, obviously, right? You can't have a foreigner as president. That would be a huge problem. So why would we allow a constitutional branch of government to be foreigners? It makes no sense. It seems insane to me, actually. I couldn't believe it when I read that. Final question. Are Republicans going, like Jasmine Crockett got a police escort? Like, is anything going to happen? Like, is it just like a sideshow? Like, is there going to be no slap on the wrist here for Jasmine Crockett? She's just going to get extra police escorts?
If there's anything, Benny, I think it'll be a censorship vote. But like I said, in ways, I think it's actually working to our benefit. And I think we should never forget that, having, voices like Jasmine Crockett, elevated, because politically it's great for us. For the country and for the people of this country, it's horrible that we have representatives like her. But at the end of the day, politically, and you talked about it earlier in your show, this is one of the reasons I think it's great because of, their polling right now is at historic lows. And this is another example of why, instead of having solutions that are common sense, that protect and, protect their safety and their prosperity, these are the type of voices on the radical left. And they're completely disconnected from American people who are out there just trying to make ends meet.
Congressman, we're always so happy to have you on this program because it just rings like a bell. There's just no bullshitting with you. It's just clean cut, and you get the honest assessments, and it's wonderful. There's no wordsmithing. Maybe you haven't been in Washington long enough to learn how to be a liar and a snake, but it's awesome. And we thank you for always being on with us, Representative Eli Crane. Such a total badass and an actual truth teller. Please follow him here on X. 136,000 Americans. Can't be wrong. Support the people who fight for us.
Thanks, brother. Appreciate it, Benny.
Godspeed.